Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the crazy world we die in. So this video is a video about the Notorious B.I.G. Now, I do apologise, this video was a little bit late coming out, but one of the things that I said I was going to do was I was going to do a video, a tribute to the Notorious B.I.G, one of the greatest rappers of all time. So guys, first of all, if this is the first time on my channel, welcome, and if you've been here before, welcome back, and I also hope to see you again. So, where do we start with the Notorious B.I.G? So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to talk about his career, I'm going to talk about some aspects of his career, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm a know-it-all, but I'm going to talk about things that are relevant to me. I grew up obviously in the 90s, so I was, very familiar with rap, whether it was East Coast, West Coast, whatever. I loved it all, and Biggie, Notorious B.I.G. was certainly one of the best to ever do it. That's my opinion. Some people may disagree, but I'm sure the majority are sitting there thinking, yep, you know what, this guy's talking sense. And hopefully that will give you the impetus to stay for the rest of this video. So the Notorious B.I.G. was born on May the 7th, 1972. And sadly, he passed away on March the 9th, 1997, making him 24 years old. So first of all, if I just stop there, if you think about that, that is just ridiculous. The Notorious B.I.G., the fact that he didn't even make it to 25 is really, really sad. And I think it puts into perspective how much he achieved in his early life. So I'm going to talk about a number of things, like I said during this video. I'm going to talk about his 2 studio albums. I'm going to talk about Ready to Die, which was his first album, and then Life After Death, which was his second album. And if you're familiar with any of my work, you've noticed that I've recently done a short on Life After Death because it was its anniversary quite recently. So the Notorious B.I.G. was born Christopher George Latour, I hope I pronounced that right, Wallace. And he was born in St. Mary's Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. So just touching on his early life, so the Notorious B.I.G. had parents of Jamaican descent. Violetta, rest in peace, sadly she has recently passed away, was his mother. And she was a preschool teacher. And again, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, Surin Wallace was the father of the Notorious B.I.G. and he was a local politician. Now, like with anybody that I talk about, I like doing a bit of research, and I did read that the Notorious B.I.G.'s father left when he was very young, I think around 2 years old. So he was raised by Violetta, who I think worked a number of different jobs to make ends meet. So moving up a little bit with Biggie's childhood, and you know what, just before I go on, because I'm so used to talking about the Notorious B.I.G, you may hear me refer to him in a number of different ways. So I may call him Biggie, I may call him the Notorious B.I.G, I may call him B.I.G, I may call him Christopher Wallace. I am talking about the same person. I just can't help myself. So he went to Queen of All Saints Middle School and he excelled in English. And it is funny because I remember years ago, I remember watching a documentary, I can't remember what rapper it was. I think it may have been Coolio actually. And he was talking about a lot of rappers are really, really good at English because obviously rapping is talking about whatever you're talking about, but using words that go together, using words to describe things, similes, metaphors, etc. So you find a lot of rappers were really good with English. And in this case, it was no different as Big excelled in English, as I just mentioned. So as I said, I keep referring to him as Big. It was one of the names that he had, one of his nicknames. And I think by the age of 10, he was quite big in stature, in height. That's one of the reasons why he got his nickname. And still sticking with his school, he attended Roman Catholic Bishop Lowlin Memorial High School and George Westinghouse Career and Technical Education High School. And I think I did read that in one of the schools, I can't remember off my head, he did go to school with certain other rappers who we know. I think Busta Rhymes was mentioned, and I also think Jay-Z was mentioned. Now moving on to rap. So when Biggie was young, he got introduced to rap, and the research that I've done said that he performed with a couple of rap crews. So one of them was called the Old Gold Brothers, as well as a group called the Techniques. And it was around this time that Biggie started going by the name of Mr. C West. At 13 years old, he was almost 6 foot. So like I said, the name Big was certainly justified in this case because not only was he of a heavy set, he was also tall as well. Sticking with his early life, and Big talks about his early life in his songs where he got involved in crime. So at 17 he actually dropped out of school and he continued to sell drugs. When it comes to crime, it's a risk you take and generally you don't get away with it eventually in the long run. And in 1989 he was arrested on weapons charges. He was given a 5-year probationary sentence, and in the following year he actually violated this, and as a result he spent 9 months in prison. Now I'm not going to really talk about the life of crime that Biggie had. As I said, who am I to talk about him? He talks about it enough in his songs. But what I'm going to talk about mainly is his rap career. So at the beginning of his rap career, he went by the name of Mr. C West. So one of the things that Big did in his early career was that he made demos in his basement. So I think you could actually look on social media and hear some of these early demos. And then it's just funny how fate works. So by hook or by crook, a demo was sent to the Source magazine. Now the Source magazine is a magazine in America which is mainly around hip hop and rap. Now, they had a section called Unsigned Hype. Now, if you go back through the history of Unsigned Hype, there's been some artists who have featured on Unsigned Hype who we know. So you've got people like Mobb Deep, you've got people like Eminem, you've got people like Common. And there was a particular freestyle that was made in 1991. Now, this freestyle was called Microphone Murderer. Again, if you look online, you could listen and hear it. This was apparently a demo that was actually sent to the Source. It was listened to and they realized that they had somebody who could spit, and Notorious B.I.G. appeared in Unsigned Hype. Now from the Unsigned Hype, this demo was actually heard by somebody who we all know. Sadly, at the moment, he's in a little bit of buffer, but we're talking about Sean Combs, Puffy, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever name you want to know him by. I will generally refer to him as Puff or Puffy because when I was growing up, that was the name that I heard the most. Now, Puffy at the time was working for Uptown Records. Now, I'm just going to talk about Uptown Records at this point. So, Uptown Records was a record company. It was founded in 1986 by somebody called Andre Harrell. Now, Uptown Records were pretty well known, and some of the artists that have appeared on Uptown Records throughout the years will be quite well known to yourselves if you like a particular genre of music. So, some of the acts that they had on there, you had people like Heavy D and the Boys, rest in peace, Albie Shaw and Guy. Now, you may remember Guy. One of the members of Guy was Teddy Riley, very well known, became part of Blackstreet, also was very instrumental in producing Michael Jackson's Dangerous album. In 1990, Puffy signed an internship with Uptown Records, and while he was there, he worked with other acts. So you may know certain acts such as Mary J. Blige, which I'm sure you know, and Jodeci. That Puff had involvement in Mary J. Blige's 411, as well as Jodeci's first two albums, which was Forever My Lady, brilliant album, and Diary of a Madman, brilliant album. We're going to move to 1993, and 1993 was a monumental year for a number of people and for a number of different reasons. So it was around this time that Puffy decided to sign a new artist, the Notorious B.I.G. Now, there's a film called Who's the Man? Have you seen it? I haven't seen it for ages. But however, the reason this is relevant is because this film had a soundtrack, and one of the songs on the soundtrack was a song called Party and Bullshit. Now, this was Biggie's first main song that was released. So again, you may have heard Biggie on the underground scene or in demos, but this was his first mainstream song that came out. Now, Party and Bullshit, good song. It was very, very well received, and it looked like things would go from strength to strength. However, in July 1993, due to some issue, Puffy was fired from Uptown Records. So he left, and he took his newly signed artist, the Notorious B.I.G, with him, and he started his own company, Bad Boy Records. He started Bad Boy Records around 2 weeks after he was fired from Uptown. And again, it's crazy how fate works, because you would think if you weren't fired, everything could have taken a completely different path to where we are now. Now, during this time, and again, some people may argue, say it coincided with Puff leaving Uptown. There were various changes, probably not for the better, with Uptown. So they lost various artists. So Mary J. Blige, I believe, left the label. Jodeci left the label and they started associating with Death Row Records. It looked like the sacking of Puff wasn't very a move full of wisdom. Right, we're now going to move forward a year. We're going to move to 1994, September the 13th. And this was a monumental day in rap history as far as I'm concerned. The album Ready to Die dropped. Now, Ready to Die was Biggie Smalls' first studio album. And this album contains songs which I'm sure you know. Well, I'm just going to remind you about this album. I'm going to talk about a couple of the tracks and look at a couple of facts about this album. There was only one guest appearance on the whole album. Do you know who that was? I'm sure you do if you're a fan of rap, but if you didn't, it was Method Man from the Wu-Tang Clan. And this album had 3 singles, and you could argue, and some might say 3 of his biggest tracks. So you had single number 1, which was Juicy, single number 2, Big Papa, and then single number 3 was One More Chance, a One More Chance remix, because the One More Chance on the album was a different version to the single that was put out. Now, a bit further in the video, I'm going to list my top 5 Biggie tracks, which I've done in my short, but I'm going to do it again for you because that's the sort of guy that I am. I'm a nice guy, you know. Now, with Ready to Die, and I didn't know this, it was actually recorded in two phases. So it was recorded initially, or some of the tracks were recorded initially, and then there was a gap between other songs being recorded. And now this is really interesting, because one of the things I read, that certain tracks that were recorded earlier sounded a bit different to the tracks that were recorded after. And when I say a bit different, Biggie's flow. So the early tracks, the first tracks that he did, so these are tracks like Give Me the Loot and Ready to Die, were deemed as less friendly. Now, when how you define that term is up for interpretation, but I've termed it as maybe the raps were raw. You know, it was just Biggie just going at it, spitting what he had to say, and then he came back and recorded some of the other tracks, which were maybe not his tone, but his flow was a bit more relaxed, a bit more accessible maybe to people who weren't hardcore hip hop fans. Let me know your opinion on that, because as I said, I didn't know that. But those two tracks, Give Me the Loot and Ready to Die, you could argue and say that the content on those tracks are maybe a bit different to some of the other tracks. So this album had a number of themes, the sort of themes that you generally associate with rap albums around that time. You know, violence, drugs, women, survival, drug dealing. And some people say that certain songs, or certainly some of his songs, had certain themes to it. So you had Juicy, which is sort of like a rags to riches song, you could argue. And then, you know, you got Big Papa talking about, you know, enjoying the lifestyle. Now, one of the things that Biggie was praised about on this album was his delivery, you know, his flow, his storytelling ability, and is Biggie the best at doing it? When Biggie spits, it's amazing, and I think this album just certainly highlights his ability. But yet, Ready to Die, in my opinion, was an absolutely outstanding album. Here's the track list, just to show you some of the tracks on there. Did you have a favourite? I mean, there were some really good tracks on this album, and I don't want to say my favourites because I might spoil my top 5 Biggie tracks. But yeah, this album, absolutely amazing. Ready to Die. Actually, obviously I'm going to be talking about Life After Death shortly, but I do have another question for you. What album did you prefer? Did you prefer Ready to Die, or did you prefer Life After Death? Maybe hold that thought, but you know, please put it in the comments when you do. But I'm going to talk about Life After Death, and I won't compare the albums, but you know, maybe when I remind you of some of the songs, you may have a think and say, oh yeah, one was better than the other, but we'll see. Now, I personally don't think you could talk about the Notorious B.I.G. without mentioning Tupac. So I'm not going to go into this matter too much, but I do have to mention it because I think you can't really talk about their lives without mentioning the other, because they were so intertwined. So Biggie, Tupac, let's go. Now, everybody knows that they were friends. From what I've read, they met on the set of Poetic Justice. Now, if you remember, that is the film that Tupac was in with Janet Jackson, I believe. I hope I got that right. Yeah, it is Janet Jackson. That's correct. And I've heard conflicting stories. You know, you read up, you watch what people say, but apparently one of the things that Pac had, he had Party and Bullshit on repeat. He loved the song, and obviously he met Big, and the two just hit it off. And so from what I've read, you know, when Big was in LA, he would, you know, hang around with Pac, and I think vice versa as well. I think they went to parties together. I think they performed together. You could see footage, or you could hear. I think they've certainly got a couple of songs where they both perform on the track. And apparently Biggie got a lot of advice from Pac at the beginning. So he obviously saw Pac as somebody who was established. So if you think of Pac's career with Digital Underground, you would think then at that point Pac had already released Strictly For My Ends. So from what I understood, Big sort of looked up to Pac as in what he was doing in the music industry, obviously with his acting as well, and he sought advice. And the rumor is that Big actually approached Tupac and asked Tupac to manage him. Pac has told Big no to stay with Puff because Puff will make him a star. And you could argue and say, you could say that Pac gave good advice, because regardless of what, you know, madness Puff's in now, you can't deny his sort of ability to, you know, make tracks, boost people up in terms of a musical sense. So because of talking about these two guys, I have to talk about an incident which happened on November the 30th, 1994. Now this happened at the Quad Studios. Now this was the studios in New York, and I've seen conflicting stories about what happened on this day, depending on who who you listen to, who you read about, whose account you read, you hear different versions of events, but it's generally accepted that Park was going to the Quad Studios to record some form of song, and already present in the studio was Big and a couple of other people, including Little C's, and it's understood that Little C's has seen Tupac walking outside and has shouted out from the window to say, yo, you know, he's here, hello, blah blah blah, and all that. So Park goes into the lobby of the Quad Studios, and there's three men who basically rob Park. Park tries, you know, he's not having it, and he gets shot during the melee. Money and jewelry was demanded from him, and he was shot 5 times. Now, fortunately, Park survived this incident, and he went to hospital. In December the 1st, against medical advice, he discharged himself from hospital. And because of this incident, Park basically believed that Big, Puff, probably Little C's, had some involvement in the incident, whether they knew about it, they set him up, they were privy to it. So Park gave an interview with Vibe magazine and basically accused Big, Puff and the others of being responsible to what happened to him. And what coincided with this is that Biggie released a track called Who Shot Ya. Now again, there's conflicting stories. Now if you listen to Who Shot Ya, a lot of people take it as a diss towards Park or makes references to the incident. Now Biggie has said that the song was recorded before the shooting incident. I don't think we will ever know the truth, but Park already angry about what happened and believing that Big was involved in the incident, hears this song and it basically just adds fuel to the fire in his mind. It's worth mentioning at the time that Tupac was going through legal troubles, and as a result he was incarcerated in Clinton correctional facilities. Not too long after this incident, I think in prison, again, the fire that was already ignited in him towards his animosity towards Big and Bad Boy grew and grew. And this coincided with Suge Knight from Death Row Records basically paying his bond and releasing him from prison. Now, one of the first things Tupac did was when he signed with Death Row Records is he made the album All Eyes on Me, another great album by the way, and he released the diss track Hit 'Em Up. And again, this video is not really to talk too much about Park. Sadly, on the 7th of September 1996, Park was shot in Las Vegas, and he died on September the 13th, 1996. So again, reading up and doing my research into the murder of Park, this affected Biggie greatly. So you think at the time there was this whole thing, East Coast, West Coast, but you got to remember that Biggie and Park were friends. You know, Biggie had sought advice from Park, they'd hang out together, and then all of a sudden this has happened. It's led to this split, divide, and then subsequently Park has lost his life. It was rumoured that Big was really upset at this. They never got a chance to resolve the matter, and just looking back at it, it's just really sad, the whole incident. Now, Big started working on Life After Death, which was his second studio album. However, it was pushed back because of a number of incidents, including a car accident involving Biggie and Little C's. Now, in September 1996, Big had to rent a vehicle, and apparently there was something dodgy with this vehicle. Little C's was driving and they've gone into a rail, and they suffered quite serious injuries. So Big had a broken left leg, and C's had a fractured jaw. And I think there's actually a song on Life After Death where Biggie makes reference to it. Now, Biggie was in hospital for months, and he was confined to a wheelchair, and subsequently he relied on a cane. You may recall seeing Biggie with a cane during maybe Hypnotize or around that time, and that was because of the car accident. He had 6 months therapy, and just going back actually, I think it was Long Kiss Goodnight was the song that he made reference to. Now, Life After Death eventually was released in 1997. However, it was released 16 days after the passing of the Notorious B.I.G. So I'm just going to touch on the Notorious B.I.G's passing. So he passed on March the 8th, 1997, and this happened in LA. Now, he attended the Soul Train Awards in LA, and after the awards, he had left the venue. He was in a vehicle, I think Puff was in another vehicle was pulled up, and he's been shot a number of times, and I think the final shot was the one that proved fatal. Like I mentioned, Life After Death was released 16 days after his passing. And again, from a personal point of view, I remember Park passing. I remember when I first heard it happen. I remember the same thing with Big. Both incidents made me really sad, and I do wonder if, you know, if both were alive now, you know, how good their music would have been. Would they have, you know, resolved their issues? Sometimes it's sad to think about it. So let's talk about Life After Death. So Life After Death was a double album CD, and like I've mentioned previously, In 1996, 1997, I make reference to the holy trinity of double album CDs. So the first one, you've got Tupac's All Eyes on Me, which came out in 1996. You then got Big's Life After Death, which came out in 1997. And then you've got Wu-Tang's Wu-Tang Forever, which also came out in 1997. 3 double albums, 3 great albums. Now, Life After Death was definitely different to Ready to Die. So first thing, you had more guest appearances. So like I mentioned, Ready to Die only had one, which was Method Man. Life After Death had numerous people, from DMX to the Locks, R. Kelly, another person in a bit of bother, Lil Kim. And I think this was certainly something which Puff would have thought about, which was basically a not a ploy, but basically a plan to reach a wider audience. And I think that's sort of reflected in some of the songs. So you look at some of the songs on Ready to Die compared to Life After Death. Now, I think Life After Death has got a lot more radio friendly songs, and I'll give you some examples. More Money, More Problems. You've got Sky's the Limit, Hypnotize. I think there's 3 songs straight away which you hear, which I think are certainly more appealing to the masses, if that makes sense. Certainly a very good album though, and don't get me wrong, Big still spits, you know, immensely on this album. I said it is a brilliant album, and like I said, look at my short that I've done recently where I don't list my top 5 songs, but I list 5 songs on the album which were maybe underrated, the songs that I remember listening to when I was a kid. Even a bit of, I won't say a bit of comedy on the album. No, there is a bit of comedy on the album. So you've got the intro to Nasty Boy, which I find funny. Some people may find it not funny perhaps, you know, you sensitive souls out there. You've also got Player Hater, again, which was a song, some people say it probably should have been on the album, but again, that's a completely different song to, you know, Biggie doing a little bit of singing and Puff joining in. But yeah, it's got some really, really good songs on the album. I certainly think it is a very strong album. So going back to my question, what albums did you prefer, Ready to Die or Life After Death? Again, let me know in the comments. I'm certainly going to reply to any that I see. Personally, for me, I do prefer Ready to Die. I think Ready to Die is the better album. That's just my opinion. So like I mentioned, before I stop this video, I'm going to list my top 5 Biggie songs. So let's go. So straight in at number 5. I had a joint number 5, so I had Warning, great song, love it actually, and it's one of those songs that's grown on me over the years. And then I had One More Chance, but the original version, the album version. So they were my joint number 5 songs. So Big Papa was number 4, and again, like I mentioned in my short, I reckon some people will be quite surprised, some people will probably have this quite high. Don't get me wrong, great song, but there were just 3 songs that I preferred. So Juicy at number 3, and I could argue and say this could have been top 2. Juicy, great song. I certainly think it's better than Big Papa. I love it. I think the majority of people do as well. But there's just, like I mentioned, there's just 2 songs that I prefer more. So here we are, number 2. Everyday Struggle. I love this song so much. The message, what he's talking about, and I can relate to some of the things he's talking about. When, you know, when he's talking about stress, etc. Brilliant song. And my number 1 song, Give You the Loot. And it's funny because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this was one of the songs that he did early before he sort of toned or changed his tone and his flow a little bit. This song was great, and you know the best thing about this song is when you listen to it, it's the way that he's able to change different flows in the song. It's like there's like 3 of them. It's like, obviously it's Biggie in the song, but it's like he's got 3 different flows and all of them are absolutely amazing. But guys, that is my top 5, and it's funny because all 5 of them are from Ready to Die. But again, that's taking nothing away from Life After Death, but I said I just preferred Ready to Die. But guys, that's my tribute to Notorious B.I.G. Rest in peace. I can't believe it's been so long since he's passed. Just 28 years. Absolute madness. Guys, if you like this content, if you could press the like button, press subscribe. And again, please feel free to put any comments in the comment section, anything that you need to correct me on, because I don't know everything, or if you've got an opinion, especially let me know what's your top 5 songs. Guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Crazy World We Die In. Take care.